Welcome to our deep dive into the world of Gnosticism and the Law of One. We're going to be looking at how these two, like, totally different sources approach this huge concept of oneness. So if you're ready for a serious, mind-blowing experience, get ready.
Right. We're going to be diving deep into the Nag Hammadi Library, which is this collection of 52 ancient texts discovered in 1945 in Egypt. And we're going to compare them with the Law of One, which is this channeled message from the 1980s.
I mean, it's like we're connecting ancient secrets with a more modern message. Kind of makes you wonder about how knowledge travels through time, huh?
Absolutely. And speaking of connections, both these sources, the Nag Hammadi texts and the Law of One material, they both focus on this really profound idea of oneness, this idea that everything is interconnected and comes from a single source.
Yeah, oneness. So first, let's set the scene. The Nag Hammadi texts, they weren't found on purpose. It was a total accident, and a farmer was just digging, and boom, jar full of ancient manuscripts. They'd been hidden for centuries.
Yeah, incredible, right? And it took like decades to translate and publish them. So they've given us a whole new understanding of early Christian thought, including ideas that some people thought were heretical.
Totally adds to the mystery. And then we have the Law of One material from, well, much more recently. A group of researchers channeled this entity, Ra, through a woman named Carla Ruckert. Ra claimed to be this social memory complex, like a collective consciousness from a super advanced civilization.
It's interesting, right? Both the Nag Hammadi texts and the Law of One, they're presented as like these universal truths. What's wild is how they both arrive at oneness, but from totally different angles. They overlap in some ways, but they also have some major differences.
Totally. Okay, so let's start with the Gnostic view of oneness. What jumps out from the Nag Hammadi texts?
So one of the big ideas you'll find in texts like the Tripartite Tractate is the idea of a divine spark inside each of us. Basically, a fragment of the divine that's stuck in the material world.
Like a little piece of God trapped in all this earthly stuff.
Exactly. And the goal for Gnostics is to awaken this spark and achieve what they call gnosis, this direct experience of the divine. And that leads to a reunion with the one, the ultimate source of like all existence.
Sounds like a journey of the soul back to where it came from. But this is where things get, well, kind of dark. The Gnostics weren't exactly fans of the material world, were they?
You got it. They saw this world as flawed, created by, well, a lesser deity. You'll come across him in texts like the Apocryphon of John. His name is Yaldabaoth. He thinks he's the top dog, the ultimate god, but he's not, and his creation is messed up, which is why our divine spark is trapped here.
Wow, talk about a God complex gone wrong. So
Mhm.
basically, the Gnostics were all about escaping the limitations of the material world and getting back to this pure spiritual realm, one of light and oneness.
Exactly. They were all about transcending the material to find that oneness.
Okay, so that's the Gnostic perspective. Now, how does the Law of One approach this whole oneness thing?
Well, Ra's main message is actually really simple, but super deep. All is one. It's basically saying that everything in the universe is connected. Like every being, every single thing is a part of a single consciousness, which is the creator.
So similar to the divine spark idea, but without, the whole hating the material world thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the main differences between the two. The Gnostics wanted to escape the material world, while Ra suggests that all experiences, even the tough ones, have a purpose in the creator's journey of self-discovery.
Hmm. So instead of a prison, this world is more like a school, a place where we learn and grow through different experiences, good and bad.
Yeah, I like that. Ra's perspective is way more unified, less like good versus bad, light versus dark. It's more like both material and the spiritual are part of this big plan, this grand design of the creator. It's like the creator is experiencing itself through everything that exists.
Whoa, that's an amazing thought. But if everything is truly scored us in, as both these sources say, why is there so much conflict and division in the world? How do they explain that?
Well, that's something both the Gnostics and Ra try to tackle. And it all comes down to this idea of free will.
Free will, our ability to make our own choices.
Right. The Gnostics believe that this flawed creator deity, Yaldabaoth, basically tricked humanity with ignorance and illusion, leading to all the separation and suffering. Like, we're living in some kind of, well, cosmic Truman Show, unaware of who we really are and our connection to the One.
That's a really good analogy. What does Ra say about free will?
Well, Ra explains that the Creator, out of love, gave us free will so we could choose our own paths and learn from our experiences. So all the bad stuff, the conflicts, the suffering often come from choices made out of fear and this feeling of separation, not from love and unity.
So it's not like the material world is bad in itself, but we have the power to choose, separation or unity, love or fear. helping others, or just thinking about ourselves.
Right. Exactly. And those choices, they shape both our own reality and the reality of everyone around us. But then this brings up a really interesting question. If we have this free will, is there a right way to achieve oneness? Is there like a specific path?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we're going to explore as we look deeper into the practices and insights in both the Nag Hammadi text and the Law of One. What kind of guidance do they give, for moving towards oneness, both personally and, well, as a whole?
That's where it gets really interesting. We'll be uncovering some specific practices and rituals from the Nag Hammadi text and then comparing those to the Law of One's focus on love, compassion, and helping others.
Seems like both, even with their differences, agree that seeking knowledge, being self-aware, and connecting to something bigger than ourselves are key to finding that oneness.
Absolutely. And that's the connection we're going to explore next time. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the practical stuff, how all this can actually impact our lives in real ways. We've been talking about this whole oneness thing and how both the Nag Hammadi scriptures and the Law of One material present it. It's wild how these sources, like coming from totally different places in time, both lead to this really profound idea.
Yeah, and we touched on how the Gnostics saw the material world as flawed, like something to get away from. But I'm curious about Ra's view. Does the Law of One suggest anything we can do, practices or insights to experience oneness while we're still here, in this earthly realm?
Totally. Ra, just like those Gnostic texts, stresses how important seeking knowledge, deepening self-awareness, and connecting to a higher power is. But the approach in the Law of One, it's a lot more about actually putting these principles into practice in everyday life.
Okay, so less theory, more action. What kind of practices does Ra actually recommend? Like, what can we actually do to cultivate oneness?
One of the big things Ra emphasizes is service to others. It's not about some grand gesture or being like a martyr, but more about just making conscious choices to act in ways that, well, benefit others. Think of those small acts of kindness, compassion, and understanding that you can do every day.
So, like helping a neighbor, or really listening to a friend, or even just smiling at someone you don't know, those can help us move toward oneness.
Exactly. Ross suggests that even these tiny actions have a ripple effect, like they generate positive energy that spreads out and makes the universe more harmonious.
Kind of like be the change you want to see in the world.
Mhm.
But Ra takes it a step further, right? It's not just changing the world, it's also about us evolving spiritually.
Right on. Ross sees helping others as something that can really push us to grow personally and align ourselves with this energy of oneness.
So it's not just about being nice, but recognizing that spark of the divine in everyone and acting accordingly.
Mm.
Does that include ourselves too?
Great question. Ra is all about self-love and self-acceptance as part of this path to oneness. It might sound counterintuitive, but you can't truly love and serve others unless you love and accept yourself first.
Yeah, I could see how that might seem, well, a bit backwards. If oneness is about recognizing how we're all connected, why is loving ourselves so important?
Well, think of it this way. It's recognizing that you're inherently worthy and treating yourself with the same kindness and compassion that you would offer to anyone else. It's understanding that we're all part of the same divine source, and that includes you.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've got helping others and self-love. What about, seeking knowledge and being self-aware? How do those fit into all of this?
Ra is big on meditation and contemplation as tools to like broaden our consciousness and really get to know ourselves better. It's not just about sitting in a lotus position and chanting, though. Ra's approach is more about cultivating a state of quiet awareness.
So being able to quiet the mind chatter and observe our thoughts and emotions without judging them.
Yeah, spot on. And through that process of observation, we can tap into our inner guidance, that quiet voice inside us. Ross suggests that if we meditate regularly, we can gain more clarity, get more insight, and better understand ourselves and where we fit into this whole universe.
That sounds amazing, but my mind is always racing. Is there any hope for someone like me to find that quiet awareness?
Totally. It's like anything, it just takes practice. Ra gets that there will be times when your mind is all over the place. The key is to just notice those thoughts without getting caught up in them and gently redirect your attention back to your breath or whatever you're focusing on.
So patience is key, and not getting discouraged when my mind inevitably wanders.
Exactly. Meditation is a journey, not a destination. It's about carving out time for looking inward and building that connection with yourself. Now, another thing Ra highlights is the importance of living in harmony with nature.
So connecting with the natural world.
Yes, it's about recognizing that all life is interconnected, and we need to treat the planet with respect and care. We're not like separate from nature, we're a part of it.
It's more about shifting from this idea of controlling and using nature to one of respect, give and take, and interconnectedness.
You got it. And that shift in mindset can show up in things like reducing what we consume, making choices that are, well, better for the planet, and actually spending time in nature, appreciating its beauty and wisdom.
Well, less about being a hermit in the woods and more about making conscious choices that reflect our understanding of, how everything is connected.
That's a great way to sum it up. These practices helping others, self-love, meditation, living in harmony with nature, they're all tools to move us closer to oneness in our everyday lives. It's not about having this big enlightenment moment, but making those small, consistent choices that align with love, unity, and, well, interconnectedness.
It's striking that both the Gnostic texts and the Law of One, even though they come from such different perspectives, both seem to point to the same truth. That we're not just individuals isolated from each other, but interconnected beings who are part of something way bigger than ourselves.
That's a profound realization. And recognizing how we're all interconnected can really change how we see the world and experience it. It can be incredibly freeing and empowering.
It's like we've had blinders on, focusing on how we're separate, and now we're taking them off and seeing this vast web of connection.
Exactly. And that shift can have a ripple effect, not only in our own lives, but in the lives of everyone around us. When we see ourselves as part of a unified whole, we're more likely to act with compassion, understanding, and the sense of shared responsibility for, well, the well-being of all beings.
So it's not just a philosophical concept, but a call to action, a way of living that embraces unity, love, and interconnectedness.
Well said. And that brings up a crucial question. How do we actually integrate these teachings into our everyday lives? How do we make them real?
That's the million-dollar question. It's one thing to understand these concepts intellectually, but it's another to actually, see how they work in real life. Like, how can this idea of oneness guide us when we face, challenging situations like a conflict with a coworker, a tough decision, or a personal struggle?
Those are the moments when it's crucial to remember that you're not alone. Even if you feel isolated in what you're going through, you're still part of this vast, interconnected web of life.
It's like knowing you have this invisible support system, even when times are tough, right?
Exactly. And in those moments, you can ask yourself, how would someone who embodies the energy of oneness approach this? What choices would they make?
So it's stepping outside of our limited, ego-driven perspective and trying to see things from a higher, more compassionate view.
Exactly. It might involve asking questions like, how can I approach this conflict with understanding and compassion instead of judgment and blame? Or how can I make a decision that benefits everyone involved? Or how can I use this challenge to learn and grow?
So instead of reacting out of fear and a sense of separation, we can respond to these challenges with love and wisdom.
That's a great way to put it. And as you practice this, you might notice your energy shifting, like a sense of peace and clarity that comes through even when things are difficult.
It's not about pretending the challenges aren't there, but approaching them with a different mindset, one that's rooted in this understanding of oneness. And as you mentioned, that shift can spread outwards, affecting not only us, but the people around us.
Exactly. It's like radiating that energy of oneness, creating a more harmonious and compassionate space for everyone.
It's a beautiful vision, a world where compassion, understanding, and this deep sense of interconnectedness guide people.
And it's not just some utopian dream, it's something we can actually create through our choices, our actions, and just our way of being in the world. It reminds us that we're not just watching this grand cosmic play, we're actively participating, co-creating our reality.
I love that. It highlights the power we each have to create positive change, both in our own lives and in the world. But what about when we mess up? When we make choices out of fear or separation instead of oneness?
It's important to remember we're all on this journey of learning and growing. We're going to stumble, make mistakes, and fall back into old patterns sometimes.
So it's not about being perfect all the time.
Definitely not. Ross stresses how important self-forgiveness and self-compassion are. When we make a mistake, we can acknowledge it, learn from it, and move on without beating ourselves up.
It's about seeing ourselves as works in progress, always evolving and learning from everything we experience.
Exactly. Even our mistakes can serve a purpose in our spiritual growth. They offer valuable lessons and chances to grow.
It's like those fail-forward quotes we can learn from our stumbles and use them to keep moving towards oneness.
Great way to look at it. The path to oneness isn't about reaching some state of perfect enlightenment, but about embracing all of our human experience, the good and the bad, the wins and the losses, and using it all to fuel our spiritual growth.
And that includes our relationships with others, which can be some of the most challenging and rewarding parts of being human.
For sure, our relationships can act like mirrors, reflecting back our patterns, beliefs, and behaviors.
Like that saying, you attract what you are. Our relationships can show us where we're in alignment with oneness and where we still have some work to do.
Right. And by approaching our relationships with the principles of oneness, compassion, understanding, forgiveness, and acceptance, we can turn them into powerful opportunities for growth and healing.
So it's not about finding the perfect partner or having conflict-free relationships, but about bringing this awareness of oneness to all our relationships and being willing to learn and grow together.
Beautifully put. And when we do that, our relationships can become these incredible catalysts for our own spiritual evolution and for this collective shift towards a more loving and harmonious world.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on one more thing about oneness. The idea that we're not only interconnected with all beings, but also with the entire universe. It's something that both the Gnostic texts and the Law of One hint at.
That's a fascinating idea. Both sources suggest that our consciousness goes beyond our physical bodies and that we're deeply connected to the cosmic web of life.
It's like those times you look up at the stars and feel this sense of awe and wonder, like you're part of something way bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And Rad even suggests that our thoughts and emotions have an actual impact on the universe, contributing to its overall energy and vibration.
So we're not just tiny specks in this vast and different cosmos. We're actively participating in the grand unfolding of the universe.
That's the idea. It's pretty empowering, don't you think? It suggests we have this responsibility to use our consciousness wisely, to focus on thoughts and emotions that are aligned with love, compassion, and harmony.
Like we're each holding a piece of this cosmic puzzle, and the choices we make, the energy we radiate, contributes to the whole picture.
That's a beautiful analogy. So as you go about your day, remember that you're not just this separate person living in a limited world. You're a divine spark, a radiant expression of the one, connected to everyone and everything, actively shaping reality with each thought, word, and action.
And when we step into that awareness, we tap into our true power and potential as co-creators of a more beautiful, compassionate, and enlightened world.
Exactly. And that's a message worth spreading, don't you think?
We've really explored some fascinating ideas in this deep dive, haven't we? Looking at Gnostic texts and the Law of One material and how both point to this idea of oneness.
Yeah, it's been a pretty mind-blowing journey. We've seen how both, the ancient wisdom from the Nag Hammadi Library and the more modern channeled insights from the Law of One, how they both, in their own way, offer a way to understand this deep concept of oneness.
And we've talked about how oneness isn't just some abstract philosophy. It's something we can actually live in our daily lives through things like helping others, self-love, meditation, and connecting with nature.
Right, exactly. And the really cool thing is that when we start to, actually live by these principles, we can start to see real changes in our relationships, our choices, and, well, just our overall experience of the world.
One thing I've been thinking about throughout this whole conversation is oneness a destination or is it a journey? Is it something we achieve or is it something we're always working towards?
That's a great question. And it really gets to the heart of what both the Gnostic texts and the Law of One are trying to tell us. Oneness isn't about reaching some perfect state of enlightenment. It's about embracing this ongoing process of growth, expansion, and integration.
So it's not like flipping a switch and suddenly, boom, you're one with everything.
Not exactly. It's more like a spiral. We might find ourselves circling back to similar themes or challenges in our lives, but each time we approach them with, well, a higher level of awareness and understanding.
Like climbing a spiral staircase. You're always going up, but you're also circling back to the same point, just from a different perspective.
Exactly. And as we move along the spiral path towards oneness, we're probably going to experience those moments of profound connection, clarity, and insight. Those aha moments when things become clear and you get a glimpse of how everything is interconnected.
Yeah, those moments can be so powerful and inspiring. But I'm guessing there are also times when we might feel doubt, confusion, or even resist this whole path. Times when we fall back into old patterns of, separation, fear, or judgment.
Of course, that's totally normal. It's all part of the process. The key is to be kind to yourself in those moments. Remember, we're all learning and growing at our own pace.
So it's not about, like, beating ourselves up when we don't perfectly embody this idea of oneness.
No, not at all. It's about seeing those moments as opportunities to learn, to course correct, and to integrate what we've learned. It's about embracing all of our human experience, the good and the bad, the messiness, the challenges, and the triumphs, while still holding on to that vision of oneness as our guiding light.
I love that. And as we move through this journey, it's important to remember that we're not alone, right?
Right. We're all connected. We're all traveling the spiral path towards oneness together. And we can support each other along the way, by sharing what we've learned, offering compassion, and celebrating each other's wins.
It's like we're all part of this cosmic dance, all moving and grooving towards this realization of our shared unity.
I love that image. And as we let go and surrender to the rhythm of this dance, we might find ourselves experiencing those moments of pure bliss, joy, and connection.
Those moments when we feel truly alive, connected to something bigger than ourselves, and filled with purpose and meaning.
Exactly. And those moments can be like glimpses of the ultimate reality, the reality of oneness that's beneath everything.
So it's not just a concept, it's an experience we can have right here, right now, if we're open to it.
You got it. The more we cultivate this awareness of oneness in our daily lives, the more we open ourselves up to these experiences.
Like we're tuning our inner radio to the frequency of oneness. And as we do, the signal gets clearer and stronger.
Great analogy. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to encourage everyone to keep exploring this idea of oneness, experiment with the practices we've discussed, and see how this understanding can change your life.
It's a journey worth taking, isn't it?
Yeah,
It can lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves, our place in the universe, and how everything is connected.
absolutely. And it's a journey you can embark on with excitement, curiosity, and this deep knowing that we're all in this together.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought to ponder. If everything truly is money, one, what possibilities does that open up for you, your relationships, the world?
That's a powerful question. Let it guide your actions, inspire your choices, and ultimately lead you to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Until next time, keep diving deep, stay curious, and embrace the beauty and mystery of oneness.